I would rather end my life, and I'm talking R-A-ther die, than to claim that woman as my future wife.
The rooftop went half quiet. People turned. Phones came out. Someone always films when a drunk man takes a microphone. Some of y'all have been asking when I'm going to settle down, when I'm going to make it official with my girl. He laughed, pointed his drink toward a woman at the edge of the crowd. That one. The one who thinks buying me shoes and paying my rent means I owe her a ring. The woman he pointed at stood near the railing, beautiful, black, still. Her hands wrapped around a glass. She was no longer drinking. Let me be real with everybody here tonight. He swayed, smiled, the smile of a man performing cruelty as entertainment. I would rather end my life, I'm talking rather die, than to claim that woman as my future wife. The rooftop laughed. Not everyone, but enough. She's useful, though, he continued. Pays for everything. Signs whatever I put in front of her. Thinks love means handing over your bank details. He took a sip. But wife? That? He gestured at her with his glass like she was a menu item he was sending back. Nah, not even in the afterlife. He looked across the rooftop at another woman, lighter-skinned, smiling, standing with a group of colleagues. Now that one, he said. Delilah. Baby, come here. This is the upgrade. The rooftop erupted. Faith Savannah stood at the railing and felt 80 people look at her with a mixture of pity, amusement, and the specific secondhand shame that people feel when they watch someone be destroyed in public and are relieved it isn't them. She did not cry. She set her glass on the railing. She turned to leave. And as she walked toward the elevator, she passed a man standing alone on the far side of the balcony separated from the party, watching from the shadows the way he always watched. Dark suit, angular jaw, a glass of water he hadn't touched. He was her boss. She was his secretary. And the expression on his face as he watched a drunk man with a microphone humiliate the woman who had organized his calendar, anticipated his needs, and made his corporation function for 2 years was not anger. It was the specific, terrible stillness of a man deciding how many pieces to break something into. He mocked her in front of 80 people, called her useful for her bank account, said he'd rather die than call her his wife. And the Korean Mafia boss, her boss, the man who's been silently in love with her for 2 years, watched the entire thing from the balcony. If you already know this boyfriend is about to lose everything, including his freedom, subscribe right now, because what happens the next morning changes this woman's life forever. Let's go. Faith Savannah was the kind of woman who made powerful men look competent. She was 27, Nigerian-American, raised in Houston by a mother who cleaned office buildings at night and told her daughter, learn how they work, then make them work for you. Faith had taken the advice, literally studied business administration, mastered 3 languages, and landed a position as executive secretary to the CEO of Kang Industrial Group, the largest construction and logistics conglomerate in Seoul. Her boss was Kang Do-jun, 33, Korean, the kind of man whose name appeared on buildings and whose face did not appear in newspapers because he preferred the specific power of anonymity over the fragile power of fame. He was the head of the Kang Syndicate, an organization that operated legitimate business holdings across 9 countries and less legitimate operations across several more. Faith didn't know about the syndicate when she was hired. She learned within 6 months, not because anyone told her, but because she was intelligent enough to recognize that a construction CEO who required armed security, encrypted communications, and a personal driver named Sergeant Yoon who carried something heavier than car keys was not running a standard corporation. She stayed anyway, not because the money was extraordinary, though it was, because the work was extraordinary. Because Do-jun treated her with a respect she had never encountered in a professional environment, he listened when she spoke, valued her analysis, and never once made her feel like the job was beneath either of them. He also, though Faith did not know this, had been in love with her for approximately 22 months. Do-jun was not a man who expressed feelings the way other men expressed feelings. He did not flirt. He did not compliment her appearance. He did not send flowers or make comments about her dress or manufacture reasons to touch her hand. What he did was notice. He noticed that she drank her coffee with exactly 1 sugar and a specific amount of milk that she measured by color rather than quantity. He noticed that she reorganized his schedule every Thursday to create a 2-hour gap that she thought he didn't know about the gap she used to call her mother in Houston. He noticed that she wore a small gold necklace every day, a gift from her grandmother, and that on the days she wasn't wearing it, she was having a bad day. He noticed everything. He said nothing. Sergeant Yoon, who had watched Do-jun run a criminal empire without breaking a sweat and fall completely apart over a woman who sorted his mail, summarized it simply. Sir, you are the most powerful man in Seoul, and you cannot say I like you to a woman who sits 10 feet from your desk. She works for me, Do-jun said. It would be inappropriate. You run a criminal syndicate. Your definition of inappropriate is extremely selective. That's different. It's really not, sir. Kane Okafor was Faith's boyfriend. 29, Nigerian American, handsome in the specific way that is useful for getting through doors, symmetrical face, athletic build, a smile calibrated for women who want to believe. He worked in sales for a mid-range electronics company and spent money like a man who had a trust fund, which he did not. What he had was Faith. Faith paid the rent on their apartment. Faith's name was on the lease. Faith had co-signed his car loan. Faith had added him to her bank account, the joint account she had set up, because he told her that's what couples who trust each other do. She trusted him. She had no reason not to. He was charming and consistent and only cruel in ways she hadn't learned to identify yet. For 18 months, Kane had been systematically positioning himself inside Faith's finances. Not with the sophistication of a con artist, with the clumsy determination of a man who understood that the fastest way to fund the life he wanted was to attach himself to the woman who could fund it. The apartment was in Faith's name. Kane had been pressuring her to add him to the deed for months, for legal protection, babe. The bank account had accumulated Faith's savings from 2 years of working for the highest-paying CEO in Seoul. Kane had been making withdrawals, small at first, larger recently. Faith noticed. Kane told her it was investments. She believed him because she worked 14-hour days and didn't have time to audit a man she loved. Then Delilah appeared. Delilah Mensah, 25, Ghanaian American. Faith's colleague, an administrative assistant on the same floor of Kong Industrial Group. Pretty, ambitious. The kind of ambition that looked like friendliness until you realized the friendliness was a strategy. Delilah had been sleeping with Kane for 4 months. They met at a company mixer, the same kind of event where Faith would later be humiliated. Kane saw Delilah across the room and decided that his exit strategy had arrived. Delilah was the upgrade he wanted, or more accurately, the display model he wanted to show off while still using Faith's credit cards. The plan, such as it was, had 3 steps. Step 1. Get Faith to sign the apartment deed transfer. Kane had prepared the document. He told Faith it was a lease renewal. She hadn't read it yet because she'd been working on a quarterly presentation for Do-jun. Step 2. Drain the joint account. Move the funds to a personal account Delilah had helped him set up. Step 3. Humiliate Faith, publicly destroy her socially so thoroughly that she would be too ashamed to pursue legal action. Make the breakup so devastating, so public, so complete that Faith would disappear rather than fight. The rooftop party was step 3. Steps 1 and 2 were scheduled for the following Monday. Kane had the documents ready. He had the bank transfer queued. He just needed the weekend for the humiliation to settle into Faith's bones, to make her so broken that she'd sign whatever he put in front of her just to make the pain stop. What Kane did not know, what Kane could not have known, because Kane did not pay attention to the world beyond his own reflection, was that the man on the balcony was not just Faith's boss. He was a man who had spent 22 months memorizing the color of her coffee and he had heard every word. He's been draining her bank account for months. He has a fake deed transfer ready to steal her apartment. Delilah, her own colleague, helped him set up the secret account. And the rooftop speech? That was step 3. Destroy her publicly so she's too broken to fight back. He has no idea that the Korean Mafia boss, the man who knows what color her coffee is before she orders it, just watched the entire performance, drop A, and subscribe. The next morning changes everything. Faith didn't go to her apartment that night. She couldn't. The apartment was Kane's space now, his clothes, his cologne, his presence saturating every room. She checked into a hotel near the office, a small room. She sat on the bed in the dress she'd worn to the party and stared at the wall and replayed every word from the microphone until the words stopped hurting and started making her angry. At 8 a.m., her phone rang. "Miss Savannah, Mr. Kang would like to see you at the office." It was Saturday. Doo-jun did not work Saturdays. In 2 years as his secretary, Faith had never received a Saturday summons. She went. The office was empty, weekend security only. The executive floor was silent, the specific silence of a building designed for noise, operating in its off hours. Doo-jun sat behind his desk. Dark suit, Saturday or not, the suit didn't change. Black shirt, open collar, the tattoo on his neck, visible. A cup of tea that he had made himself because Faith wasn't there to make it, and it was terrible. But he drank it anyway, because admitting he couldn't make tea felt like a larger concession than he was prepared to offer. Faith stood in the doorway. She had changed clean clothes, hair pulled back, professional armor reassembled. But her eyes were red-rimmed, and her hands held her portfolio like a shield. "Sit down," Doo-jun said. She sat. In the chair across from his desk, the chair where she usually took notes, reviewed documents, managed the schedule of a man who managed an empire. "I was at the party last night," he said. "I know. I saw you on the balcony." "Then you know I heard." She looked at her hands. "Mr. Kang, I apologize for the disruption. It won't affect my faith." "Stop." She stopped. "I'm not here to discuss your work performance. Your work performance is the best I've encountered in 15 years of business." He paused. "I'm here because your boyfriend is planning to steal your apartment and your savings on Monday morning, and I thought you should know before then." The air in the room changed. "What?" Doo-jun opened a folder on his desk. He turned it toward her. "My security team conducted a standard background review of individuals connected to my senior staff 18 months ago. Your boyfriend was flagged. At the time, the financial activity was minor, small withdrawals, nothing actionable. I didn't bring it to your attention because the amounts were ambiguous, and your personal life is not my jurisdiction." He pointed to the documents. "Since last night, I've had the file updated. The withdrawals have accelerated $43,000 over 6 months, moved to a personal account registered to a Delilah Mensa, the woman from the party." Faith's hands went still on the portfolio. "Additionally, this document," he slid a paper toward her, "is not a lease renewal. It's a deed transfer. It transfers full ownership of your apartment to Kane Okafor. He's been carrying it for 3 weeks, waiting for you to sign." Faith looked at the document. At the signature line, with her name typed beneath it. At the legal language, she would have signed on Monday because she trusted the man who handed it to her, and she'd been too busy preparing Doo-jun's quarterly presentation to read the fine print. She would have signed it. She would have lost everything. "How long have you known about Delilah?" she asked. "The relationship? 4 months. The financial conspiracy? 6 weeks. The deed transfer? 3 days. 3 days? Why didn't you?" "Because 3 days ago, I was still deciding whether telling you was professional concern or personal motivation. After last night, I stopped caring about the distinction." The room was very quiet. "Personal motivation," Faith repeated. Doo-jun looked at her. For 2 years, he had looked at her across a desk and said nothing that wasn't work-related. For 22 months, He had measured his words the way architects measure load-bearing walls, every sentence engineered to hold the weight of what he wasn't saying. He was done measuring. You are the most extraordinary person I have encountered in my professional life. That is a professional observation. He paused. You are also the most extraordinary person I have encountered outside of it. That is not professional. That is the reason I know what color your coffee is before you order it, and why I have rearranged my schedule 53 times in 2 years to ensure that the Thursday gap you think is secret remains undisturbed. Faith stared at him. You know about the Thursday calls? I've always known. Your mother's name is Adais. She asks about the weather in Seoul and whether you're eating enough. The answer to the first question varies. The answer to the second is yes, because I have the office kitchen stocked with the foods you eat when you're stressed, which is frequently. Because you work for a man who generates stress the way other men generate small talk. I'm not finished. He stood, walked to the window. Seoul stretched below them, glass and steel, and the morning light that made the city look like it was made of money. What that man said on the microphone last night was designed to break you. To humiliate you so thoroughly that you would sign the document on Monday without reading it and disappear from Seoul without fighting. That was the plan. Mockery as a weapon, public shame as anesthesia. He turned from the window. I will not allow it. Mr. Kang. Dojun. Mr. Kang, you're my boss. I'm aware, which is why I spent 22 months saying nothing. But last night a man stood on a rooftop and told 80 people he would rather die than marry you, and I stood on a balcony and realized that I would rather dismantle everything I've built than spend one more day pretending that the woman 10 feet from my desk is just an employee. The office was silent. I'm not asking you for anything, he said. I'm telling you 3 things. 1, your boyfriend is a thief, and I have the evidence to prove it. 2, I will protect your assets, your apartment, and your financial position, regardless of what you decide about anything else. 3, I have been in love with you for 22 months, and I am telling you now because a man with a microphone said you weren't worth dying for, and I need you to know that he was wrong about everything. Faith sat in the chair across from his desk, the same chair where she had sat for 2 years, taking notes and organizing schedules, and being 10 feet from a man who memorized the color of her coffee and felt something shift in, a place she had sealed shut the night before. The coffee, she said, 1 sugar, milk measured by color, caramel, the specific shade between too light and too dark. You check it against the light from the east window every morning. You notice that? I notice everything about you, Faith. It's been a significant operational distraction. She almost laughed. Almost. This is extremely inappropriate, she said. Yes. You're my boss. I'm aware. And you just told me you've been in love with me while simultaneously handing me a criminal investigation file on my boyfriend. Multitasking is a core competency. She did laugh, unexpectedly. Through the residual tears and the shock and the realization that the man she had sat 10 feet from for 2 years had been building a vocabulary of her in silence. What happens on Monday? She asked. On Monday, your boyfriend attempts to file the deed transfer and discovers that the document has been flagged by the Seoul Land Registry as fraudulent because I had it flagged this morning. He attempts to access the joint account and discovers it has been frozen by the bank because my legal team contacted them at 7 a.m. He then discovers that the company where Delilah Mensa works this company has initiated a termination review for misuse of corporate systems to facilitate financial fraud. You did all of that this morning? I did all of that before making the tea. The tea, as you may notice, is terrible. I'm significantly better at dismantling fraud than brewing beverages. Kane Okafor woke up on Monday morning feeling like a man whose plan was coming together. The rooftop humiliation had landed. He'd checked social media clips of his speech were circulating among their friend group. Comments ranged from "he's cold for that" to crying, laughing emojis. Nobody had defended Faith. Nobody had called him out. The social destruction was complete. Today was payday. He dressed. He drove to the bank first. "I'd like to make a transfer from this joint account." He slid the details across the counter. The teller typed, paused, typed again. "I'm sorry, sir. This account has been frozen." "Frozen? By who?" "I'm not able to disclose that information. You'll need to speak with our fraud investigations department." Kane's stomach tightened, but he adjusted. Maybe Faith had noticed the withdrawals. Maybe she'd panicked. He could talk his way through this. He always did. "I'm here to file a deed transfer." The clerk reviewed the document, typed, frowned. "This document has been flagged, sir." "Flagged?" "Flagged for potential fraud by our verification system. The transfer cannot be processed until a full investigation is completed. That typically takes 6 to 8 weeks." 6 to 8 weeks? Additionally, the registered owner of this property, a Miss Faith Savannah, has filed a formal objection to any transfer of ownership. We received it this morning. Kane stared at the clerk. "Faith knew," he called Delilah. "Did you say anything to anyone?" "About what?" "About the account, the plan, anything." "Of course not. Why?" "Because the bank account is frozen and the deed transfer is flagged, and Faith somehow knew to file an objection this morning." Silence on the line. "Delilah?" "Kane. I just got called into HR." Delilah Mensah sat in the Human Resources office of Kang Industrial Group and listened to a woman in a gray suit explain that a review of company systems had revealed that Miss Mensah's corporate email and network access had been used to facilitate the creation of a personal bank account for an individual unaffiliated with the company in violation of Section 12C of the Employee Conduct Policy. "This is a terminable offense," the HR director said. "I can explain. The explanation will be noted in your file. Your access has been revoked effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your personal items." Delilah walked out of Kang Industrial Group carrying a cardboard box. She passed Faith's desk on the way out. Faith was sitting at her station, organizing Do Jun's Monday schedule, wearing the gold necklace from her grandmother a good day with a cup of coffee that was exactly the right shade of caramel. Faith looked up. Delilah looked at her. Neither of them spoke. What was there to say? One woman had helped a man steal from the other. The other woman's boss had dismantled the theft before breakfast. The cardboard box said everything. Kane arrived at Kang Industrial Group at 2 p.m. He was not an employee. He was not on the visitor list. He walked through the lobby with the specific entitlement of a man who believed that loud confidence could replace actual access. "I need to see Faith Savannah," he told the receptionist. "Miss Savannah is unavailable. Do you have an appointment?" "I don't need an appointment. She's my girlfriend." The receptionist paused. The specific pause of someone who has been briefed. "One moment." She made a call. 3 minutes later, the elevator opened. Sergeant Yoon stepped out. "Mr. Okafor, Mr. Kang will see you." "I'm not here for Kang. I'm here for Faith." "Mr. Kang will see you. This is not a request." The executive office was large, glass walls, the Seoul skyline beyond, a desk that cost more than Kane's car. And behind the desk, a man Kane had never met but who had been studying him for 18 months. Kang Do-jun sat in his chair the way geography sits on a map, settled, permanent, uninterested in relocation. "Sit down, Mr. Okafor." Kane sat. Not because he wanted to, because the room told him to. Because the man behind the desk had an energy that made standing feel like defiance, and defiance felt, for the first time in Kane's life, genuinely dangerous. "You don't know who I am," Do-jun said. "You're Faith's boss. I'm the CEO of the company where your girlfriend works. I'm also the man who froze your bank account this morning, flagged your deed transfer as fraudulent, and terminated the woman who helped you set up the account you've been using to steal from Miss Savannah for 6 months." Kane's bravado flickered, then recovered, because men like Kane have a muscle memory for confidence that activates even when the situation no longer supports it. That money was from a joint account. That's not theft. $43,000 withdrawn over 6 months, transferred to an account registered to a woman who is not the account co-holder, without the knowledge or consent of the primary depositor. That is theft, Mr. Okafor. In Korea, it's called embezzlement from a trust arrangement. The penalties are specific. You can't. I can. I did. And I will continue until every dollar is returned and every document you fabricated is destroyed. He opened a folder. The deed transfer was not a lease renewal. You told Miss Savannah it was. That's fraud. The withdrawals were characterized as investments. They were not. That's also fraud. The account was established using corporate systems by an employee who was conspiring with you. That involves my company. That makes it my business. Dujun stood. He walked around the desk. He sat on the edge close to Kane now. The distance between CEO and visitor collapsed into something more intimate and significantly more threatening. But I'm not here to discuss the legal details. My lawyers will handle those. I'm here because of what you said on Saturday night. Kane went still. You stood on a rooftop and told 80 people that you would rather die than claim Faith Savannah as your wife. Dojun's voice was the specific kind of quiet that makes people lean forward. You said she was useful for her bank account. You pointed at her like she was something to return. You called another woman the woman who helped you steal from her an upgrade. He paused. I was on the balcony. I heard every word. And I need you to understand something before you leave this building. He leaned forward. The woman you humiliated on that rooftop has run this corporation for 2 years. She has managed schedules that determine construction projects in 9 countries. She has organized communications that, if mishandled, would have consequences you cannot imagine. She is the most competent, most principled, most essential person in this building, including me. His eyes didn't blink. And you, a man who sells mid-range electronics and steals from the woman who pays his rent, stood on a rooftop and said you'd rather die than be with her. He straightened. I'm going to grant that wish. Not literally, but professionally, financially, socially. Every company in Seoul that does business with mine, which is every company in Seoul that matters, will receive a summary of your financial conduct. Your current employer will receive the fraud documentation by end of business today. Your visa status will be reviewed by immigration authorities who are responsive to my requests. And the 80 people who laughed on that rooftop will watch you disappear from this city the same way you planned for Faith to disappear quietly, publicly, and without anyone defending you. Kane's face had gone through every color the human face can produce during a reckoning. He was now a shade that did not have a name. You can't do this, he whispered. I already have. The only variable is whether you leave voluntarily or whether Sergeant Yoon escorts you. I'd recommend the first option. Sergeant Yoon's version involves more stairs. Kane left the building, not through the lobby, through a side exit, escorted by security, carrying nothing but his phone and the understanding that the city he had been performing success in had just been purchased by someone who wanted him gone. Faith watched from the window of the conference room. Dojun found her there. He's gone, Dojun said. I saw. The legal process will take a few weeks, but your assets are protected. The apartment is yours. The money will be recovered. Thank you. Silence. The things you said in your office, Faith said. She didn't look at him. She looked at the window, at Seoul, at the city that had been the backdrop of 2 years of silent proximity. About the coffee, the Thursday calls, the 22 months. I meant all of it. I know you did. That's the problem. Why is that a problem? Because I've been sitting 10 feet from you for 2 years and I thought I was invisible. You were never invisible, Faith. You were the only thing I could see. I just didn't have the right to say it. She turned from the window. You still don't. You're my boss. I know. And I just got out of a relationship with a man who used me for money and humiliated me in front of everyone I know. I know that too. So this is terrible timing. The timing is catastrophic, he agreed. But the information is accurate. I'm in love with you. The timing doesn't change the fact. It just changes the schedule. The schedule. I'll wait. As long as you need. The coffee will still be the right color. The Thursday gap will still be there. I'll still notice the necklace. I'll still know when you're having a bad day. None of that changes. The only thing that changes is that now you know why. Faith looked at him, this man who ran a syndicate and couldn't make tea, and had spent 22 months building a dictionary of her habits in silence because he thought speaking would be inappropriate. "You're impossible," she said. "I've been told. You dismantled my ex-boyfriend's entire life before 9 a.m. on a Monday. I'm a morning person. You stocked the office kitchen with my stress food. Plantain chips and ginger tea. You go through approximately 1 bag and 3 cups per quarterly reporting cycle." She stared at him, and something that had been locked since a rooftop and a microphone and the words, "I'd rather die," cracked open. Not wide, not all the way, but enough. "I need time," she said. "I have time. I've had nothing but time for 22 months. And if I decide this is too complicated, then you remain my secretary. I remain your boss. The coffee remains the correct color. And I spend the rest of my career pretending that the woman at the desk outside my office is not the reason I come to work every morning." He paused. "I've been practicing. I'm terrible at it. But I'll manage." "You won't manage." "No," he admitted. "I won't. But I'll try. And trying is more than Kane ever did. Professional." Kane's employer received the fraud documentation at 5 p.m. Monday. By 5:15 p.m., he was on a video call with HR being asked to explain why a financial fraud investigation connected to his name had been forwarded by every major corporation in Seoul. He was terminated by 5:30 p.m. The call lasted 12 minutes. Kane spent 9 of them saying, "I can explain." The HR director spent 3 of them saying, "We've heard enough." The joint account was unfrozen under Faith's sole control. The $43,000 in diverted funds was flagged for recovery through civil proceedings. Kane's personal account, the one Delilah had helped create, was frozen pending investigation. Kane's work visa was tied to his employment. No employment meant no visa. Immigration review was initiated within 72 hours. The rooftop video, the one someone had filmed on their phone, was reshared, but this time with a different narrative. Not Kane was savage, but Kane was stealing from the woman he humiliated. Someone from the office had talked. The comments shifted. The laughing emojis were replaced by something colder. Terminated. Blacklisted by Kang Industrial Group, which meant blacklisted by every company that valued Kang's business, which was every company that mattered. She sat in her Seoul apartment, jobless, realizing that the upgrade she'd been promised was a man who was currently being deported, and the woman she'd helped steal from was sitting at a desk 10 feet from the most powerful man in the city. 3 weeks after the rooftop, Kane Okafor boarded a flight at Incheon Airport. Economy, 1 suitcase. The shoes Faith had bought him. The watch Faith had bought him. The clothes that Faith's salary had funded. He was leaving Seoul the same way Faith's mother had once described. People who use other people's money always end up traveling light. It didn't happen immediately. Faith needed time. Doojun gave it, not dramatically consistently. The same way he had loved her for 22 months, by showing up, noticing, and not requiring anything in return. The first change was small. He started making tea for both of them. His tea was still terrible. She told him so. He kept making it. She kept drinking it. The second change, she started staying late, not for work, but because the office felt different now that she knew the silence had weight. She would work at her desk, he would work at his. The 10 feet between them was the same distance, but the quality of it had changed. The third change, she stopped wearing the professional armor, not the blazer, the expression. She laughed at his jokes. He was funnier than a crime boss had any right to be. She rolled her eyes when he was stubborn frequently. She told him when his schedule was stupid, always. The fourth change. He walked her to her car one evening. They stood in the parking garage. Seoul was loud above them. "You said you'd wait," she said. "I'm waiting." What if I said the wait is over? He looked at her, this woman who had organized his empire and endured his terrible tea, and survived a man who used her for money and walked out of a rooftop party with her dignity still attached to her spine. Then I'd ask if I could take you to dinner. You own 12 restaurants. I'd take you to the one where the tea is worst, so you feel comfortable. She laughed. He smiled, the full one, the one Sergeant Yoon had never seen. They went to dinner. At a small restaurant neither of them owned. They sat across from each other the same distance as the desk, but without the desk, and talked about things that had nothing to do with schedules or syndicates or stolen money. She ordered coffee. He ordered tea. Both were terrible. Both were perfect. 6 months later, Faith stood in the executive office of Kang Industrial Group, not behind the secretary's desk, behind the CEO's desk, temporary. Do-jun was in a meeting downstairs. She had been promoted 3 months ago, not to a secretary's role, but to director of operations, because the woman who had been running the company's schedule for 2 years turned out to be the most qualified person to run the company's operations, and Do-jun was not the kind of man who confused romance with professional stagnation. She wore a tailored navy suit, the gold necklace from her grandmother, a new ring on her left hand, simple, elegant, the ring of a man who understood that Faith didn't need diamonds. She needed accuracy. The ring was exactly right. They had married quietly, at a courthouse. Sergeant Yoon cried he would deny it until his last breath. Faith's mother flew in from Houston and hugged Do-jun and asked him why he was so thin, and told Faith she was proud, and asked if the office kitchen still had plantain chips. Do-jun walked in, saw her at his desk. You're in my chair. Your chair is more comfortable than mine. Your chair costs exactly the same. Your chair has a better view. He looked at the Seoul skyline through the window, then at her. Yes, he said. It does. He sat in her chair, across the desk, in the visitor's seat, looking at her the way he had looked at her for 2 years, with the specific, total attention of a man for whom the rest of the world was context, and she was the text. Sergeant Yoon has a message, he said. From? From Kane Okafor. Apparently, he's in Houston. He sent a letter to the office. He wants to apologize. Did you read it? I read everything that enters this building. And? It's 3 pages of self-pity and 1 paragraph of apology. The ratio is instructive. What should I do with it? Whatever you want. It's your letter. Faith looked at the letter, then at the window, then at the man sitting in her old chair, who had spent 22 months in silence and the rest of their lives in conversation. File it, she said. Under what? Under resolved. He smiled. She smiled. The office was quiet. The coffee was the right color. The Thursday gap was still in the schedule, not for phone calls anymore, but for lunch together at the terrible restaurant with the terrible tea. Some men stand on rooftops with microphones and say, I'd rather die. Some men sit at desks with folders and say, I notice everything about you. The first kind makes noise. The second kind makes history. And that is what happens when you mock a woman in front of 80 people to steal her apartment and her savings. Kane stood on a rooftop with a microphone and told the world he'd rather die than marry Faith. He called her useful for her bank account. He pointed at Delilah and called her the upgrade. He had a fake deed transfer in his pocket and a plan to drain her savings on Monday. He didn't know the man on the balcony was the Korean Mafia boss. He didn't know the Korean Mafia boss had been in love with his secretary for 22 months. He didn't know that by Monday morning, his bank account would be frozen, his deed transfer flagged, his accomplice fired, and his entire life in Seoul dismantled by a man who knew what color Faith's coffee was before she ordered it. But here's what makes Faith different. She didn't need the Korean Mafia boss to save her. She needed him to tell her the truth. Once she had the information, she would have fought Kane on her own. She's the woman who ran a 9-country corporation from a secretary's desk. The Mafia boss didn't rescue her. He just made sure the rescue happened before Monday. And then he told her the truth about something else. 22 months. 1 sugar. Caramel by the east window. The necklace. The Thursday calls. Everything. Some men stand on rooftops and perform. Some men sit at desks and notice. Faith chose the one who noticed. If this story hit different, smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new. We drop stories that hit this hard every single week. Comment below. What was your moment? The rooftop speech? I'd rather die? The coffee color? Multitasking is a core competency? Or the ring? I'm reading every comment. Share this with someone who has ever been mocked by a man who couldn't see what was right in front of him. I'll see you in the next one. Don't be late.